Hello, this is Whammy, and welcome to another episode of Analysis is Magic. Now, before I begin the review of Rainbow Rocks, I would like to make an announcement that due to time concerns, with my being in graduate school, I'm pretty much shifting the format of this channel to being primarily a podcast. I just don't have the time to do the full-on animated video things anymore. So just letting you all know that basically from this point on, it's going to be all audio. So it's been over a year or so since Equestria Girls came out, and I did my review of that movie. And here we are with the sequel in Rainbow Rocks. Now, as someone who generally liked the first film, I was rather excited about this sequel, and the teasers and all that really helped drive that as well. So the question is, does this film live up to the excitement that I had coming into it? And I would say, generally speaking, that yes, it did. Now, I'm going to be discussing the film primarily within three big blocks. I'll talk about the music, then the plot line, and then the characters. So starting off with the music, in the review of Equestria Girls I stated I found that music rather unremarkable. Since that time, I've grown to appreciate a couple of the songs, particularly Strange New World and the Cafeteria song, but otherwise, yeah, it wasn't really anything memorable. Comparatively, Rainbow Rock's soundtrack is a great improvement, even if all the songs were pretty much released before the movie came out. Our new villains, the Dazzlings, have a very wonderful set of villain songs that have a hypnotic matter to them that the best way I could put it is it would be like Discord the musical vibe in its ability to kind of draw you in and then try to corrupt you. The opening and ending songs were particularly enjoyable. The opening song, I thought, set the mood very well for what was going to happen, and then Shine Like Rainbows worked to really hit home the themes that this movie was trying to do. The climax song, Welcome to the Show, was just all around amazing, especially visually, and it was also one of my favorite scenes simply because of what it meant story-wise when Sunset started singing. About the only song I can say I really didn't like much was Shake Your Tail, and that's probably because it was sort of the most generic and repetitive of the songs, but it was still better than most of the songs from Equestria Girls. About the only complaint I kinda have in regards to the songs is, at first, I couldn't tell much of a difference between Sunset Shimmer's voice and Twilight's, which makes sense because they have the same voice actress with Rebecca Choquette. Sorry, don't know how to pronounce that name. And I eventually did catch it. It just, at first glance, I didn't realize it. But that's a minor point in the whole scheme of things. Moving on to probably my favorite part of any kind of review is what was the plot and what did we get out of this movie. And watching the previews actually had me very concerned for the plot, and the reason was everything kind of looked like Sunset Shimmer was getting pushed to the side a little. She wasn't in the singing, she wasn't kind of up in front and center in the merchandise. Heck, I don't think she was in any of the shorts. And so I was a little worried that the movie would kind of keep that up. I was very glad to see that her being on the sidelines was a major plot point in of itself. Specifically, Sunset Shimmer's feeling that she didn't exactly fully belong yet. But to get on, before I get to that, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Twilight, since she was sort of the up-in-front protagonist in the movie. And the main plot line for her seems to be learning to come to deal with her new position as a princess and the stress of being looked to for all the answers, which sets up a parallel with Sunset Shimmer, who's struggling with her own new position and how to redeem herself. And this parallel does get emphasized in the movie when they have the scene at the sleepover and the two characters are talking, and they just basically realize they're both kind of trapped by the expectations that others have of how they should be, and they're just not quite at a point that they feel they can break free. Twilight wanting to be the leader and, trying to help. Sunset wanting to be the friend but not doesn't feel that she should, because she's still kind of working with everybody thinking of her as her old self. And in this regard, then, I do love that the Dazzlings, while entertaining, they weren't fully fleshed out villains, because their role in this movie wasn't to be fully developed villains with interesting, complex backstories, but to be the catalyst of which Twilight and Sunset learn to deal with, or the expectations others have of them, and how to be able to move beyond that. Twilight's more minor than Sunset's, to be completely honest. But this leads to an interesting situation then, where Twilight gets so stuck with the expectations for hers, the stress of leadership, she fails to really notice the deterioration that's going around her until it's kind of a little too late, and she just can't figure out how to deal with it because it's all kind of fallen out of control, and her confidence is shot. And it's Sunset Shimmer who has to end up basically saving the day, stepping in and recognizing that, look, things have gone too far, and that even though I'm new to this, I recognize that we have got to do something. And so she's the one who really steps up into the role of helping protect the friendship and really integrating herself into this new role that she is in as someone who's no longer a villain, but on par with the rest of the main six as being friends. So, all in all, I have to say that the best way to describe the plot of this film is that it's Sunset's redemption being reflected in her relationships with the main six, and the parallels between her and Twilight, with the Dazzling serve as the catalyst. Since I've talked a lot about the characters, for the rest of the section about characters, I'm going to talk about everybody else. First, Flash Sentry. Most I can say is that he existed. That's all I can say. He doesn't really have much of a presence, enough there to establish continuity and recognize he still exists, but that's about it. And I'm not going to focus on him. I don't care about him, at all. Really. Moving on to the villains, with the Dazzlings, their existence as sirens has some interesting implications in terms of world building. Time seems a little off, and the movie does kind of just push aside that the Dazzlings, if they were sent by Star Swirl the Bearded, would have been 1,000-something years ago, I think. I don't know. It's a minor point. I don't really care on that. As I said, the Dazzlings' music with its hypnotic sense kind of gives them a very Discord musical vibe, which sets up an interesting role as them being kind of the Discords of this movie, and making this whole movie, in a sense, almost a return to harmony, whereas the first Equestria Girls was Friendship is Magic Part 1 and 2. And so their personalities are enjoyable. It's a fun interaction. Like I said, they are flat characters, but I think that works for what their role in the story is. And they are threatening. And I fully admit they are better villains than Sunset Shimmer was. They seem more competent. They actually have high enough stake to be worthwhile, and high enough stakes that doesn't just seem kind of thrown in. Yeah, like I said, they work really well. It's almost like the Discords of this movie's return to harmony sort of feel to it, that at least I got. Some others have said that they're like the Changeling because they feed off the negative energy, and I think there's a parallel too, but I actually like a parallel to Discord. It just seems to be fit better on what they're trying to do, with little extra hint of Changeling because they feed off the energy. So, another pair of characters that I want to talk about, just because I've seen some complaints about it, was Celestia and Luna. Some saying that they seem really underpowered, and because they got beaten and turned to the Dazzling so easily. I'm sorry, but what were you expecting? I mean, in Equestria, Celestia and Luna are alicorn princes with magic abilities capable of the manipulation of celestial bodies. In the human world here, they're school principals, which are usually the laughingstock in the butt of many jokes about the incompetency of school officials. They are powered appropriately for the human world that did not have any, or at best, a minimum amount of magic. I think that the problem is people, it's understandable that they associate them with the question, but to understand the Equestria Girls, you do have to have the recognition that that the characters are similar but different to the show's version. And that's a really big point, I think, for understanding one of the next characters I want to talk about, which is Rainbow Dash and the rest of the main six. Some people have said that they thought Dash was a little too egotistical, but you have to remember that this Rainbow Dash doesn't have the same experiences that humbled the show's Rainbow Dash, and also in terms of, I think, maturity, the show's characters with the main six seem more young adultish because they're independent and they're running businesses and all that, and these are teenagers. Furthermore, the Rainbow Dash here, her experiences, instead of being humbly, seem to have given her a lot of reasons to have an ego, since she's the captain of sports teams, she has a cool band, and she just recently kind of gained new super awesome magical powers. I can understand her character being egotistical, especially since that's a trait that even the show's Rainbow Dash kind of has as well. But overall, though, the interactions in the main six, I think, were wonderful. You can really get a sense that these characters are friends, whereas in the first movie, they just seem to be kind of thrown together and told they were friends at some point. Here, we really get to see it, and their interactions with Sunset do show that even if the rest of the school haven't, they've forgiven her, and they're trying to incorporate her into the group, even if Sunset isn't necessarily 100% ready to feel like she deserves it. And the way that the group falls apart seems a very natural extension, I think, of the characters' own flaws and conflicts that exist even in the show. Rainbow and AJ, of course, butting heads because of Rainbow's ego versus AJ's, I think, recognition that the band has to be a group effort. Rainbow Dash's ego also being why she doesn't necessarily seem to pay much attention to Fluttershy's music, and Applejack's sense of quote-unquote practicality being why she ignores Rarity's contributions with the costumes, which in an odd way does mean that a lot of this conflict is AJ and Rainbow Dash's fault, with Pinkie Pie just kind of being the most passive in that her issues just, it's not fun anymore. Even if I think we can point to two characters in particular, it does all feel like this is just a bunch of, like Sunset says, small things blowing up into big problems. Yeah, I really love the way that the main six are written here. I don't really have any issues with them. The only thing I can say I really have any severe issues with, and it's kind of minor, is some of the usage of background characters. The references are entertaining, but I think can cause maybe some issues with continuity lockout, in that if you're new to the series, a lot of it, I don't think it's problematic, it's just you miss out a lot, and I don't want the writers to get too dependent on it. I did like Trixie's usage as a minor antagonist being manipulated by the Dazzlings, and you learn about her personality quick enough that even if you don't know much about the show, you can kind of understand, okay, this character is egotistical and wants to win badly. So you don't need to know the show to understand her role that much. But that causes a problem, though, because you do have to have some understanding, I think, of the fandom to know what the hell was going on with Vinyl. If it had been left at her opening the door and Spike's little thing that she was wearing headphones all the time, that would have been okay, maybe a fun gag. The having a Transformer car with speakers and all that, and kind of joining in as a Seventh Ranger, so to speak, that's kind of pushing, I think, about what you should use that kind of a character for, at least if you're not going to build up to that. It's not damaging much, it's just kind of, I think, was the sloppiest part of the writing in this movie. So yeah, overall, I do really love this movie. I liked Equestria Girls, I loved Rainbow Rocks. The music was better, the plot is tighter, the development is fantastic for Sunset Shimmer, and even some of the other characters. And the only issue is I think there may be a little too much reliance on background characters, but it's not fully damaging. And so this only really leaves one last thing, and that is the after end credit clip, where we see the human version of Twilight hinting at the possibility of more in the Equestria Girls verse, of which I am fully excited for, whether it be Equestria Girls 3, or I've heard some possibilities of a series, but it was something about a leak in France, Equestria Academy or something. Info on that is supposed to come out in November, so we'll see. If there's a series, I'm all for that. I wanted a series from the first movie. That actually pretty much did what this movie did. I do feel good about the future of this spin-off in terms of future programming. And so, with that, then we end this review. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I will remind you all that from now on, I'm going to be basically doing a podcast-style thing. So if you would like more of this, please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Tumblr, or WordPress. And I hope all of you don't forget to comment. This has been Whammy. and goodbye.